All right, today we're diving into a topic that's not only complex, but let's be real, is often wrapped up in a whole lot of stigma and confusion. We're talking about borderline personality disorder, or BPD. In this explainer, we're going to try to cut through some of that noise and build a really clear foundation of what it is, and just as importantly, what it isn't.
So, let's start right here, with this feeling. I think we've all had moments like this. But what if that feeling, that sense of your emotions being a completely out-of-control runaway train, wasn't just a bad day? What if that was your daily reality? Well, that experience is right at the very heart of what we're talking about today. Here's the game plan. First, we'll nail down what BPD actually is. Then, we'll look at the core pattern that really defines it. After that, we'll unpack where it might come from, and this is the most important part. We'll explore the path to treatment and what recovery really looks like. So, let's get right into it.
Okay, so first things first, let's start at square one. What exactly is borderline personality disorder? Now, this is the official clinical definition. It's a mouthful, I know, but there is one word in there that I want you to lock on to because it's the key to the whole thing, and that word is instability. We're not just talking about a simple mood swing here. This is a deep, ongoing pattern that really touches almost every single part of a person's life.
And if we really want to boil it all down, BPD kind of rests on two huge pillars. On one hand, you have that emotional dysregulation, that runaway train we just talked about. And on the other, you have this incredibly intense, deeply rooted fear of being abandoned. A lot of the experience of BPD is driven by those two things working together. So how does this pattern of instability actually get identified? How does the clinician look at this and put a name to it? Well, that brings us to the formal diagnostic criteria. And this number you see here, 5, that's the magic number, so to speak. There are 9 official criteria that describe BPD. To get a diagnosis, a person has to meet at least 5 of them. It's a clinical threshold. And here are those 9 criteria. Just take a second and look them over. You can see right away it covers a huge range of experiences, doesn't it? From those frantic efforts to avoid being left, to a chronic feeling of being empty inside, all the way to intense, sometimes inappropriate anger. It really shows you just how widespread the effects of this condition can be.
Now, to really get that unstable relationships point, we have to talk about something called splitting. Think of it like a light switch. There's no dimmer. Things are either all the way on or all the way off. It's a pattern of black and white thinking. So a person isn't just good, they're idealized as perfect. And they aren't just flawed, they're devalued as horrible. And that switch from one extreme to the other, it can happen in an instant.
And you can imagine what that does to your personal life, right? This quote just says it all. When your perception of someone can flip from, "You're the best person ever," to, "I can't stand you," in a heartbeat, relationships are, almost by definition, going to feel chaotic, intense, and really, really stormy. So where does all this come from? This is so critical to understand. BPD is not a choice. It's not a moral failing or a character flaw. The research points to a mix of factors, which experts often look at through what they call the biopsychosocial model. Okay, so it starts with biology. Studies suggest there can be a genetic vulnerability. It can run in families. And on top of that, brain scans actually show differences in the parts of the brain that handle emotion regulation. It's almost like the brain's natural braking system for feelings isn't working as effectively as it should. Then you have the psychological piece. So if someone grows up without really learning effective ways to cope with big, painful emotions, it can kind of set the stage for that dysregulation later on. And this is often tied to a really deep-seated negative self-image, this feeling of being fundamentally broken or bad. And finally, there are the social or environmental factors. Things like childhood trauma or neglect are, of course, major risk factors. But there's also something called emotional invalidation. That means being told over and over that your feelings are wrong, that you're just being too sensitive or overreacting. When you hear that enough, you start to learn that you can't trust your own emotions.
It's also really important to know that BPD rarely travels alone. As you can see here, it very often co-occurs or happens at the same time with other conditions like depression, anxiety disorders, and PTSD. So dealing with these overlapping issues is a huge part of any effective treatment.
All right, and now we get to the most important part of this entire explainer, the hope. Because for decades, and I mean decades, BPD was wrongly slapped with this untreatable label. We now know for a fact that this is completely false. There are incredibly effective treatments, and recovery isn't just possible,
it's expected.
The absolute gold standard treatment is a type of therapy called dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT. It was actually created specifically for people with BPD. And what's so powerful about it is that it's not just about talking through your problems. It's about actively teaching concrete, practical skills you can use to manage your emotions and build a life that you actually want to live.
DBT is built around these 4 core sets of skills. You've got mindfulness, which is all about staying in the present moment. Distress tolerance gives you tools to get through a crisis without making things worse. Emotion regulation helps you get a handle on that runaway train. And interpersonal effectiveness teaches you how to ask for what you need and build healthier relationships. I mean, these are truly life-changing skills.
And listen, while DBT is the gold standard, it's not the only game in town. Other specialized approaches, like mentalization-based therapy and schema therapy, have also been shown to be really effective for treating BPD.
Oh, and a quick but really important note on medication. There is no BPD pill. You can't medicate the underlying personality structure. But medication can be a huge help in managing those co-occurring conditions we talked about, like a really severe depression or crippling anxiety, which then makes it easier for a person to actually do the hard work in therapy.
So that brings us to our last section. What does the future hold? What's the long-term outlook? And honestly, the news here is overwhelmingly positive, and it completely shatters a lot of those old pessimistic myths about this disorder.
This quote really captures the modern understanding perfectly. With the right kind of treatment, major improvement isn't just a long shot, it's the expected outcome. People with BPD absolutely can, and very often do, go on to build stable, meaningful, and fulfilling lives.
So let's just hammer home these key takeaways. First, recovery isn't the exception to the rule. It's common. Second, those really dangerous impulsive behaviors and self-harm, they often decrease dramatically with treatment. That intense emotional sensitivity might stick around, but people learn to manage it. The bottom line, the thing to take away from all this is that BPD is a treatable condition, period.
Which leaves us with this final, and I think, crucial question. Now that we know this, that BPD is a treatable condition, that it's rooted in biology and painful life experiences, not in someone's character, how does that change the conversation? How do we start replacing stigma with real empathy and actually support people on their path to recovery? That right there is the takeaway for every single one of us.